Pros, save more on the materials you need to get the job done, inside and out, at Lowe's. Right now, get 10% off in-stock Trex Naturals decking, now available in more styles. Plus, get 15% off select custom entry, interior, and storm doors. Then, we'll deliver it all straight to your job site to help keep your jobs moving. Get the brands pros trust, priced right, and ready when you need them. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last. Selection varies by location.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you might not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. They make it super simple. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with coverage options tailored to your choices. Plus, you'll see which discounts you may qualify for, like the online quote discount or savings for paying in full. In fact, 99% of Progressive Auto customers earn at least one discount. See if you could save when you switch to Progressive. You'll feel good about making a savvy choice. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little extra cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
She's retired from the LAPD. Her very first call for service was a death of a baby that fell from a balcony. She's here to talk about the traumas, responding to shooting calls, handling shootings, and what a lot of people don't understand about police work. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Of all the radio stations in the United States, there are no other shows like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And on Facebook, there's only one official page. Do a search on Facebook for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. Contacting us from the great state of California, we have Lita Abella on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Lita is a former LAPD police lieutenant, Los Angeles Police Department, and she's here to talk about the traumas of the job, which had a huge impact on her, and me too. Not just her, me too. And I don't know of anybody that goes through career in policing that doesn't. She is author of the book, The Abella Model, Leading High-Stress Professional with Trauma-Informed Practices, and her website is litaabella.com. That's LITAABELLA.com. Lita, thanks for your service, and thanks for being guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
You are welcome.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and I feel kind of honored to talk to lieutenants. Usually when I had conversations with lieutenants as a sergeant, it was yes, sir, no, sir, and whatever I need to do to get them off my back.
Well, that's not how our conversation is going to be today. It's going to be a friendly conversation.
Exactly. And just, I'm sure you, in your police career, you ran into people. We had a major, a district commander, that he was a fire plug, and he was always reacting, and he was always yelling. And I learned eventually that when I got called in his office and he started yelling, I'm like, that's it. I'm going to fire that guy. I'll get rid of him. He'll be walking a foot post at midnight, blah, 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 in Jordan Hill Park. And he'd be like, relax, slow down, take it easy. And I learned how to deal with that guy, to create that buffer between, and I'm not saying this is negative, between lieutenants and above and the patrolman.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it's not an easy situation. You got to make sure they do their job well, make sure they're equipped to do their job, but protect them at the same time. And it's tough. It was really tough.
Yes, I agree with you.
So you did, I want to talk about your career. How long did you do with the Los Angeles Police Department?
I was there just shy of 20 years. So
that means you left the job right before you were eligible for a pension. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Did you win the lottery or something?
No. It was due to all the trauma, stress, anxiety, depression, all the issues that I was dealing with being in law enforcement and on the LAPD.
I get it. I really do get it. I tell people that And I'm phrasing this as a former question. The streets were bad enough. I learned how to deal with the streets. Most of my problems came from the command staff and City Hall. That's where the real stressors were.
Oh, I agree with you 110%. And that's exactly why I left. I did not leave because of, dealing with murder suspects, rapists, sexual assault suspects, criminals, arrestees, the citizens on the street. No, I left because of all the that goes on in the inner department dealing with officers, command staff, and mostly command staff, and the politics around it. It was just horrendous.
And
horrendous.
When did you start and when did you leave?
I started in 1980 and left in 2000.
See?
So I was one of the first female groups of female officers that came into the Los Angeles Police Department, and that was due to a consent decree because they were not able to hire women and minorities.
Right.
They had to lower a lot of the standards, meaning that, for example, they lowered the height requirement from 5'6" to 5'0". That didn't affect me because I'm 5'9", so
right.
I'm a tall person. But by lowering those standards, they were able to get more females, and certain cultures, they don't have tall males, so it opened the door for a lot of other cultures to come inside. It was a huge turning point.
One of the things that we share in common is I started in the Baltimore Police Department in October 1980, and I got hurt and retired in February of 92.
Oh, my God. We are almost the same time. I started November 17th, 1980, and I left on February, I believe it was 20th, 2000.
Now, LAPD has a good reputation. I know people love to, Hollywood in particular, loves to go after the LAPD, and when there's news, it's usually LA or New York. It's not the smaller agencies. That's the ones that get national news. But they've had a good reputation. I want to say this. I'm an old revolver cop. I think when you started, you were a revolver also. Yes.
38 Smith & Wesson.
It's and a lot of what, and I'm sure there's a lot of commonality. A lot of the senior officers at the time when I was a rookie police were Vietnam combat veterans. And there was a few command staff that were Korean War veterans, and they didn't play.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Just about I would say 95% of the officers that were my field training officers when I was a boot, or young, new law enforcement officer, they were all veterans from Vietnam War.
Right.
Military, at least 90-95% were military. And so it was a shocker to them. Here they are coming back from the war, and all of a sudden now they have all these females. They didn't know how to deal with it.
I see that. When I came on, we had, I'd say more than half my class was female. And we had a lot of female officers. We had gay officers. We had Jews. We had Muslims. We had every walk of life you can imagine, and no one cared one bit.
Oh, that's interesting, because that's not how it was when I came on the job. They did not want the females there. They told us that. They didn't want the minorities there. Gay people, the word gay wasn't even around in 1980. No,
it wasn't.
Probably several years later. But no, all those demographics that you just mentioned were not welcome. And they told you in your face. One
of the things that
you were not welcome.
And I always thought of, look, Baltimore is a relatively conservative police department, and L.A. had a reputation of being more progressive. And one of the things that I always am kind of shocked about is the way the West Coast agencies, maybe it's before your time, but the West Coast agencies are more progressive when it comes to lateral transfers and things like retiring on PTSD, where it's still you can't on the East Coast.
I would say that came about in the later years, but not back in the 1980s when I first joined.
There was a different school back then, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yes.
We had a mindset, and in some respects, it still holds true because you have a job there. But there's a different lingo that people use. But in Baltimore, they have a distinct slang, and they would say things like in accent. They would say things like, "You're Baltimore police. Suck it up and do your job. You can lick your wounds later on." That's all they did. And by the way, when we had really bad calls, we went to a parking lot after work and had a case of beer and talked it out. There was no peer. There's no peer support. There's critical incidents. None of that stuff.
You're absolutely right. Right after roll call, it was, let's go. You would have your roll call, your formal roll call with your sergeant in the police station. And then right after that, after you checked out your vehicle, your shotgun and everything, everybody would head to the donut shop. Yeah. And that's where you have the informal roll call.
With a short break on that note, we're talking with Lita Abella. She's a former lieutenant from LAPD. She's authored the book, The Abella Model, Leading a High-Stress Professional with Trauma-Informed Practices. And her website is litaabella.com. It's LITAABELLA.com. It's Law Enforcement Talk Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Look for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on YouTube.com, where you'll find great police videos and episodes of the podcast after they air on radio. Like everything they do, it is free. So be sure to look for and subscribe to Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on YouTube. That's the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on YouTube.com.
Return to conversation with Lita Abella on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Lita is a former LAPD lieutenant, and she has authored the book, The Abella Model, Leading High-Stress Professionals with Trauma-Informed Practices. Her website is litaabella.com. That's LITAABELLA.com. As you can tell by the title of her book, High-Stress Professionals with Trauma-Informed Practices, we'll be talking a lot about that. When I look back, Lita, the academy was one thing, and I challenged myself. I graduated second in my class. I really wanted to excel. I really wanted to be first in my class, but I wasn't. However, I thought I was prepared for what reality was going to happen when I graduated from academy and went to Northwest District of Baltimore. I was shocked at how traumatic it was, how violent it was, and I was not ready for this. I really was not.
I totally understand what you're saying. This is how shocking it was for us. When I went through the academy, our academy was 6 months long. However, because the crime was so high and so rampant in the city of Los Angeles, in our fourth month, they told us, we're putting you out on the streets. We have to get you out there. We need you. The crime is just horrendous. And so our training was accelerated. Like within a week, we had to learn what we were supposed to learn in 2 months. So it was chaotic, to say the least. And I worked Rampart Division, which they've made several movies about that division, which is just east of downtown Los Angeles. One of my first radio calls there, talk about trauma and shock, was a toddler who was playing on this little makeshift balcony on the 8th floor of an old apartment building. And the toddler fell down to the ground, and the ambulance came. We responded. The toddler wasn't there when we first arrived. The ambulance had taken the toddler to the hospital. But my first question was, where were the parents? When I saw the parents, of course, they were in shock and, stressed and everything. But the mother was like ready to pop out her next child. She was like 8.5 months pregnant. They didn't speak English. I speak broken Spanish because I was born and raised in LA. So it's like you have to speak Spanish. And by the time we arrived to the hospital, the toddler died. It was like my first time ever seeing a baby deceased. It was just so shocking. You can imagine how shocking it is for a parent to go through this, but somebody who, it's like, this is, dealing with children is traumatic in itself, but the death of a child, it was like, oh my God, how do we process this? They didn't train you for that. My training officer at that time, his wife just had a baby. about a year prior. And so he had a child almost in the same age range, and he took it hard as well. It was just unimaginable dealing with that. And like I said, they don't train you for this.
No,
it's
they
like,
don't.
Okay, move on, go to your next radio call, which is what we had to do.
I said that all the time. If you don't like me and you don't like that police officer, the way they presented themselves at your traffic stop, where'd they just come from? A lot of times just came from call. And by the way, there's still calls involving children and elderly that bother me, that raise their ugly head when I at least want them to.
Yes. For me, anything dealing with children, victims of domestic violence, those are the ones that really get to me. Sexual assault, those were the most traumatic for me.
And those are never ending.
And death investigations.
Those things like, by the way, death investigations, death notifications, I hated. I hated those.
Me too. Me too.
When we get the call from the dispatcher, and the dispatcher say, go investigate the problem, do a welfare check, and you walk up and there's flies on the inside of the window, you know it's going to be bad.
Oh, yes. Death investigations, murders, fatal traffic accidents, all of those where you had to deal with the death of a human were so traumatic. And just realizing the crime scene and the things that you saw, I mean, pieces of body parts splattered across the roadway, or in a homicide investigation, the amount of blood, and it's just horrendous. These are images that you cannot take out of your mind. They stay with you forever. I remember one time where we had a person who positioned himself so that when you opened the door, this is exactly what you saw, the first thing that you saw. And it was a person who committed suicide with the use of a 12-gauge shotgun.
And here's the thing that what people don't get is you're supposed to be professional, deal with that, do a good job, and then go to your next call for service and not have it phase you.
Exactly. And how do you do that?
I don't know. To this day, I don't.
It's still, it's fresh in your mind, and you have to move from, okay, we just handled the suicide, here it is an hour later, and now you're dealing with, a business dispute or something, and you're thinking to yourself, really? You're arguing over a $1.50 item, and I just dealt with the death of a human being, and I can't get this out of my mind.
And meanwhile, it's like, I'm going to go back a little bit to the deceased baby, the toddler. One of the things that went through my mind when I got a call for service, and it was a bad call, the dispatcher lets you know it's a bad call, it could be bad. You know everything about it is bad. You start going through your mind a mental checklist of things you got to do. Protect the crime scene, work your way out, do all these things. And then I'll never forget the first DOA I had was an old gentleman died in the bathtub in a makeshift retirement home. And I was 21, 22. I didn't know. Was this guy really dead? I'm afraid I'm going to make a mistake. You compound that with this being a child and the parents don't speak English and you've got all that other things going on. Did you feel like overwhelmed?
Oh, for sure. I mean, to say the least. Overwhelm, stress, anxiety. It's like, how do you process this? How do you deal with this? How do you go home and talk to your spouse or your family about something like this? And the thing is, most police officers don't.
No,
they
I didn't.
keep everything bottled up inside. They don't talk to their spouse or their family members, whoever they're living with. And so you become withdrawn. And you start to isolate, and people are asking you, what's going on? Are you okay? And you just say, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, part of it was, and I'm going to cut you off because we got a break coming up. I would not talk about it because I didn't want my spouse and my children to worry any more than they already did. And part of me was this psychological thing. I did very well with it, going from Cop J to Husband J to Father J, all that stuff, until it stopped working. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're talking with Lita Abella. She's a former LAPD lieutenant, author of the book The Abella Model, leading high-stress professionals with trauma-informed practices. Her website is litaabella.com. That's LITAABELLA.com. This is Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Are you a fan of true crime shows? How about True Crime with a Twist? People that actually investigated crimes, what they did, what they experienced, all for free. Just go to our website, letradio.com. It's L as in Lincoln, E as in Edward, T as in Tom, radio.com. Return a conversation with Lita Abella on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Lita is a retired LAPD lieutenant. That's the Los Angeles Police Department. She is in California. She's authored of the book, The Abella Model, leading high-stress professionals with trauma-informed practices. And her website is litaabella.com. That's LITAABELLA.com. There's one too many A's in there, Lita. And by the way, you got a great name. It's a wonderful name. One of the things I understand, I remember being a police officer. I remember the trauma. I remember all that stuff. And as a sergeant, it was a different responsibility, but I was still on the streets. I was still called for pretty much every homicide that happened in my district or my sector, all that stuff. It didn't end, and we had a lieutenant. My career ended due to injury before I hit the rank of lieutenant. I wanted to go higher. I really did. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But I jokingly tell people, when I was in the middle of the stress and the drama and the trauma and all that stuff, I knew my job. I knew what to do. The real problems for me started when I retired and things got quiet. That's when things really, really became apparent. For you, when did the problems start arising?
Oh, I would say the problem started arising from my first year on the job. Just learning how you have to remember, and you went through the same thing too. Here you are, a 21-year-old person thinking, oh, I'm an adult now.
Right.
And for me, this was my first real professional job. So you're learning so much. You're learning as a young adult. You're learning as a person who's in a profession that people look up to you, and you can be proud of. But there's so much of a learning experience there. And you're also learning about life on your days on the street and patrol, being on the police department. And by the way, respond to people, how to communicate.
Joseph Wamba, who was with your department, he used to say that he was LAPD, I believe, and he said that you deal with people all the time in bad situations. It's like a psychological you-know-what, and eventually you become top of the heap.
Yes. I actually was a character in one of Joseph Wamba's books.
Oh, really?
Back in
I feel like I'm talking to highfalutin lieutenant.
Yes, he was an awesome writer.
And he inspired me to go into police work. I originally wanted to be a priest, and then I realized that calling is not for me. And police work was right behind it. But Joseph Wamba was a big influence on me. And the movies that were made into movies from his books had a huge influence on me. Even The Onion Field had a huge influence on me.
Oh, yes. That was a fabulous book and movie, and the story behind that. I believe you had asked me about what it was like to be a lieutenant on the Los Angeles Police Department. So it was amazing as I went up the ranks, from police officer, training officer, senior lead officer, detective, sergeant, and lieutenant. But again, back in those days, so now we're looking at the 90s, people weren't accustomed to having a female at a rank that high, not only a female, but a female minority. So I got a lot of pushback from the officers. And a lot of it was, the only reason why you're at this rank is because of affirmative action.
I remember those days.
None of them ever credited me with my the fact that I had to take a lot of different tests, civil service tests, go through the oral interview. I studied. I went through the pre-training programs that will help you, get through those tests. And I talked to people. I talked to mentors. What do I need to do to get to the next level? I did a lot of my own homework to reach and attain those ranks.
You don't hit those ranks by accident. I don't care who you are.
You don't. They just don't give it to you on a silver platter and say, here's your lieutenant badge, go out and command now. No, it's a lot of hard work. And what I found was the higher in rank I attained, the less friends I had on the police department, the less the officers trusted me, because especially at the rank of lieutenant, like you said, being a sergeant is still you're
in the mix. You're there every day. Right.
Right. But as a lieutenant, now you're command staff. Now you're one of them. You're somebody that we don't trust, we don't like, and you're just a administrator now. You're not a real cop like the rest of us.
Department, they started changing the uniform when they hit lieutenant. Lieutenants above had a different uniform and different hat than the sergeants and patrolmen.
Oh, that's just interesting, because we didn't have that. Our uniform is consistent all the way up. Just the insignias are different.
They made it's like they made a purposeful point to start differentiating. There was a difference between lieutenant and sergeant.
I see. But the one thing I would say as a lieutenant was I still was out in the field when I was working patrol. As the watch commander, lieutenant watch commander, I'm responsible for everyone on that watch.
Right.
Day watch, PM watch, graveyard, mid PMs, etc. So if there was a homicide, if there was a barricade suspect, which it seems like we had every day, depending on which division I worked, I'd have to go out in the field and respond and take command of the situation. And being a good lieutenant, to call in your experts who are, who have the expertise. So, for example, in a barricade suspect, I would call out the SWAT team,
right, and
let them do what they needed to do. I would sit back and just make sure everyone's in their right place. If everything went well, great. If something didn't go as well, then who takes the blame? The lieutenant.
And it goes downhill.
Person out there.
That's they're going to catch it, and they're going to give it.
Right.
I got a question.
There's positive and negative.
As a lieutenant, as a sergeant, I felt a tremendous amount of responsibility to my squad. I didn't feel responsibility towards the other squads. As lieutenant, and just so you know, in Baltimore, we had my district was 4 sectors, and each sector had a sergeant, and then lieutenant ran the entire shift. Did you have and I had one guy that was killed in the line of duty shortly after I transferred, and I'm still bothered by that. That's the one thing that we don't want to have happen ever to anybody. Did you go through that?
Oh my God. Killed in the line of duty, I can't even, I lost track of the numbers. There were so many. As a matter of fact, I was on the LAPD Honor Guard. I buried those officers. That was one of my volunteer ancillary duties. I did that throughout my entire first 10 years on the police department. It was literally every month we were burying someone, whether they died from a traffic accident, died in the line of duty, died due to medical issues, died due to, being old or whatever. That was another traumatic experience. Can you imagine burying your coworkers on a monthly basis? That's how many deaths we had. And not only were we doing LAPD funerals, we were doing the smaller departments that surrounded us in LA County, because they didn't have as many funerals as we did, and they didn't have the officers that knew how to do funerals as an honor guard.
And it's a tough assignment. It really is. We're talking about Lita Abella. Lita is a former LAPD lieutenant. She left the job just months before collecting her pension. Just months before. She's authored the book, The Abella Model, Leading High-Stress Professionals with Trauma-Informed Practices, and her website is litaabella.com. That's spelled LITAABELLA.com. When we return to a conversation on Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we're going to talk about why she left, and what she's doing about it today. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Be sure to download the free Clubhouse app. It's like having your own talk radio station on your phone. And best of all, it is free. Be sure to follow John J. Wiley at LET Radio Show and look for major announcements. That's right, the Clubhouse app is free. And be sure to follow him for major announcements. That's John J. Wiley or at LET Radio Show. Did I mention that it is free?
Return to conversation with Lita Abella on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. She is a former LAPD lieutenant, and she is author of the book, The Abella Model, Leading High-Stress Professionals with Trauma-Informed Practices. Her website is litaabella.com. It's spelled LITAABELLA.com. I've got to say this, Lita. By the way, thank you for your service. Thanks for being a guest on the show. I'll say that again, hopefully when we leave.
Thank you.
One of the things that, and by the way, I don't know about you. Maybe I'm going to ask this as a foreign question. I've had more people thank me for my service since I retired than ever on a job, and I never know how to say what to respond, what to say back.
I always say thank you, and you're welcome.
That's
and it
the
was
best
a pleasure.
Look, that's the socially correct thing, but for a while it felt awkward. And you know what it was? It was I policed in the era, I'm sure you did too, of public information officers. We didn't talk. But if you did get talked to by the media, it was the heroic stuff is like, I was there at the right time just doing my job. And that was your standard response. You didn't say nothing. By the way, you would catch what from the other police officers you worked with, and you would get a nickname, and it would last forever. So I didn't want to make any mistakes. I didn't want to get brutalized by them. Was that part of your MO?
In certain situations, but as a supervisor, you had certain leeway to talk to the media, especially when you're dealing with a homicide or a barricaded suspect or something that's newsworthy, which seems like we had a lot on a daily basis. And then formal press releases would go through the public information officer. But we had training on media relations and how to respond to the media, so I didn't have an issue with that.
Good. I do want to talk about your career. You left at 19 years and a few months before your pension. You said earlier in the conversation you felt like you had to. And I'm sure you caught what about leaving for your pension, didn't you?
Oh, I walked away with nothing. I walked away with zero. No dollars, no pension, no nothing. And I mean, I can go on for the next 8 hours on all the issues dealing with that. But I'll tell you in a nutshell, the reason why I left is because I felt like if I didn't get out of that toxic situation, I was going to kill myself with everything that was going on. Here's like probably one of the number one reasons. Can you imagine you're responding to a radio call in the middle of the night? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. You have 5 robbery suspects prone down on the ground, and nobody's responding. Nobody's coming to your assistance call, help call, backup call, and they're not responding because they are good old boys who don't like women and don't feel that they should be in the field. They shouldn't even be a police officer. So it's like, you want to be a police officer, then you deal with it yourself. I had a certain division that I worked, and that was what I dealt with on a daily basis. So I would have, when I put out an assistance call or a help call, backup call, I would have officers respond from other adjoining divisions, which in police officer life, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes
is a long time.
The life and death.
Yeah, especially if you're fighting in an alley with someone that's trying to disarm you. That's a long time.
Right. I mean, here I am out 4 or 5 suspects. You only have so many bullets, and you can't just go around shooting and killing people. No. You have to have obviously the right probable cause and a reason to use force. But the good thing that I had was very good communication skills. And I was always able, 95% of the time, to talk my way down, to de-escalate the situation, because I knew I needed that skill in order to survive out in the world.
That's what the first things they taught us.
Hardcore criminals.
Well, number one is that we talk about muscles. I was a big muscular guy, and they say the biggest muscle you have is your brain. Use that. Because once you start using your biceps and other stuff and getting dirty, hairy fist fights, you can't return from that. You can't talk them down. Once you pull the gun, you can't talk them down. Use your brain first. And by the way, you brought up a term that I really don't like, de-escalation, because it's become the catchphrase nowadays, and we were doing that in the 80s before it was a thing.
Yes. That's the way we were taught. We were taught to de-escalate the situation. Calm everyone down, bring everything down so that you can have a, verbal communication with the suspect or suspects instead of yelling and screaming and everybody out of control. And so that's the way we were taught. But that was probably one of the number one reasons why I left. There was just a lot of politics going on. Like I said, the higher I rose in rank, the less I had of friends on the job. And I love my career in law enforcement. It was one of the best careers I've ever had. And unless you were there, it's really hard to explain to people what you go through. You meet wonderful people.
Yep.
You see a lot. I mean, here in Los Angeles, on one side of the division, for example, working Wilshire Division, I could be with, multi-million-dollar homes with movie stars and celebrities and such, and then go drive 10 minutes to the other side where I'm in what we used to call back then was like the mini jungle.
Yep. No, I get it.
And I know that's
guess where I felt most comfortable.
Now.
I felt most comfortable in the high crime, lower income areas. That's where I had the least amount of problems.
It could be that way, and I can understand that. I personally didn't like dealing with a lot of the celebrities because they were, all that.
I'll never forget, Lita, the very first time I got called to the rich area, the upper end, and like, can you turn off my alarm because it's against my religious practices? Like, no. Can you come in through the servant's back door? No.
Oh, I had that too. You had that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
No,
yes.
I'm not doing that.
Come in through the servant's entrance. Really? You're calling the police and you want us to – wait, this is 1990. What do you mean the servant's entrance?
I know.
Are you kidding me?
That's the kind of, and by the way, and we're almost out of time, but I remember getting a call. The dispatcher said, "Call me." So I picked the landline and called him and said, "You got to go to this house. It's at 3:00 in the morning. Locate Mr. Brown. I'm making him a name and tell him their son was killed in a car accident in Ohio." I was 22 years of age. And I'm trying to tell someone their son is never, you're never going to see him again.
Right.
That's the part
those are awful.
We don't talk about with police work. I get why you left. I wish you had toughed it out for a few more months or found a way to get inside or something so you can get that pension. But I understand totally. What are you doing today?
So today I'm a public speaker, coach, consultant, a mediator, and a licensed private investigator. So I have a lot of hats that I wear. But primarily dealing in this trauma-informed practices, I go out to mostly attorneys and legal professionals and give them continuing legal education presentations and trainings on trauma-informed practices. Because I just retired from the State Bar of California. I worked 6.5 of those years in the Office of Chief Trial Counsel, in which I assisted in the investigation and prosecution of attorneys for misconduct. And then from there, I went to the Office of Professional Competence Lawyer Assistance Program, where I talked to attorneys who were suffering with mental health issues.
And there are quite a few, actually. There's PTSD is an issue with them, too.
Oh, yes. It's an issue with not only law enforcement, legal professionals, it's healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, psychologists, psychiatrists. It's in the education profession. I'm a professor of business law. Educators are dealing with PTSD, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue, burnout. The media.
Wait a minute, you sound like you described me to a T. Especially with compassion fatigue. I don't have a whole lot of that. We're almost out of time. Lita, I got to ask you, your website is litaabella.com. That's LITAABELLA.com. Can people find out more about you and contact you there?
Oh, yes. I have everything on my website. Yes, that is my website there. Everything about the services that I provide.
Well, Thank you very much for your service, and thanks for being a guest on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.